Ideas are killing innovation. We've never lived in a world with more of them: brainstorms, hackathons, offsites, vision statements. And yet, at the same time, we're living through what economists call the productivity paradox. Despite better tools, better people, and a lot more money, progress feels sluggish. In entrepreneurship, 75% of startups fail, and that's worse for first-time founders. Most new products don't get adopted. Most innovation programs quietly die. And this isn't bad luck. This is a system failing at scale. And the awkward truth is, the thing that we celebrate most in innovation, ideas, is the thing doing the damage. We assume our job as entrepreneurs is to come up with ideas, explain them, improve them, add features, sprinkle some technology on top, build prototypes of them. Only later do we ask the question, if at all, does anybody actually need this? We can't seem to help treating the validation of ideas as a nice to have. In every other discipline where there is risk and unknowns, we start with questions. Engineering doesn't start with a skyscraper, it starts with asking what the purpose of the building is. Medicine doesn't start with a miracle cure, it asks what our symptoms are. And science doesn't start with an answer, it starts with a question of why something is. And yet in innovation, we invariably start with fully formed solutions loaded with assumptions, and then we're shocked when reality doesn't cooperate. Now, my first exposure to the scientific method was in middle school, and my teacher was a lovely lady called Mrs. Badcock. Now, you'd have to be a great teacher with a name like that. And the words she wrote on the blackboard 40 years ago, you'll probably recognise from your own science classes. Hypothesis, apparatus, method, results, conclusion. The scientific method. Science starts with a hypothesis. It starts with a question with skin in the game. Now fast forward to modern innovation, and we say we're using the scientific method. But compare Mrs. Badcock's process to the one most of us will recognise: build, measure, learn, from the Lean startup. Lean tells us to begin in the middle of the scientific process, go to the end, and then head back to the beginning. Why does this happen? The answer stems from the way our brains are wired. Ideas are the natural output of our fast, instinctive, impulsive, what we call System 1 brain. This is our dominant brain. It's always on and it loves solutions. If you're being chased by a tiger, a brain with the ability to come up with a fast solution is self-evidently a very useful asset. But in innovation that requires us to think logically, then we need our more thoughtful, logical System 2 brains. In innovation, we need a forcing function to ensure we engage that part of our brain and force ourselves to ask a question and not default to a solution. And I stumbled on this forcing function 15 years ago in one of my first innovation workshops. We had hundreds of ideas on the wall, total chaos, no clue as to how to prioritize or test them. And most of the people in that workshop were looking at me like I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And the truth was, I didn't. And in that moment, I asked myself an honest question. If we know ideas are solutions, the fun, easy bit, what is it that we're not doing? What's the hard bit we're avoiding? And of course, it's customer need. Of course, it's the tension. Why someone would get their credit card out and pay for your product. So back in the workshop, I say, okay, no more ideas. From now on, whatever gets written on the whiteboard, you've got to start because first. And I didn't really know what I meant by turning because into a noun, but what I was trying to communicate was that we had to start with the scientific method. We had to start with a question as to why somebody would need the product. So someone pipes up, I've got this great idea, and I say, no. And then I say the words that I thought would be a throwaway comment, which have come to define my life ever since. What's the because? What's the need? And the person in the workshop says, okay, because, and you can see their logical, effortful brain trying to swim upstream to empathize with their customer. They say, because filling in insurance forms is boring. I say, okay, great, we know there's someone, it's Jill. What's the solution? That was much more available to them. Of course, they want an app that pulls information out of their email. Because someone will. This is the way we embed the scientific method in innovation. Because is the need, the one-way gate through which you must pass before you say anything else. Someone is the customer to whom the because relates, and then finally you can do the fun, easy bit. Finally, you have the solution. And that's it. That's the whole thing. No technology, no complex processes, just a behavioural forcing function. A couple of weeks after that workshop, we kicked off experiments which led to Deep Green, the business we sold to Octopus. And Deep Green is an example of a great idea. We build data centres, people pay us for the computers in the data centres. The heat that the computers generate, instead of wasting it, we give it away for free. So the because looks obvious. It looks like I want free heat. But the discipline saved us from that shiny idea, and it has saved us countless times since. There are actually 2 customers for Deep Green. Of course, people love the free heat, but the customer that matters most are the customers who are putting their computers in our data centres. And 10 years ago, when we started to experiment, they definitely did not want to put their kit in our data centres. The because that mattered was the because of the buyer. And that only became true 5 years ago. So this isn't a theory. This is a practical way to stop building on hunches and start building on behaviour. And I know what you're already thinking. You're thinking, this sounds great. We'll do a What's Our Because workshop next week for an hour, and we'll all write our becauses on a Post-it note. Don't bother. This isn't an optional process. It's not a business school gimmick. This is a way of being. You're either working in this way or you're not. And as it turns out, it is incredibly hard to start this way. Our lazy System 1 brains don't give up without a fight. For 10 years, I would walk into workshops and people would start to almost immediately rant. Why are you being so pedantic? Why are you making things so complicated? And the reaction was the point. The brain was resisting. The truth is, such a seemingly innocuous question, what's the because, fundamentally alters what we think entrepreneurship is, and more practically how we work, because every idea is a function of all the becauses, all the someones, and all the wills within it. Which means that every idea you've got rattling around in your head is potentially thousands of hypotheses. We think the work of entrepreneurship is coming up with ideas and building them, but actually the core job of an entrepreneur is to define, refine, and prioritize hypotheses. This takes a long time to do well. It's not just admin. In practice, that means you should be spending anywhere between 30 to 50% of your working day defining hypotheses. And now I also know what you're thinking. There's no way I can spend 50% of my time in front of a whiteboard having philosophical conversations about human behaviour. But I would humbly submit that is why you are going to end up the wrong side of that 75% statistic. Take comfort from history. This is far from an original thought. All the greatest minds have worked this way. Plato believed that wisdom only came from robust debate. Einstein said if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about the solution. And closer to home, Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, the founding fathers of behavioural economics and the people who coined the phrases System 1, System 2 about our brains, they worked in this way. Our work as entrepreneurs is to understand the problem, not polish the solution. Because someone will. A simple reordering of priorities, very hard to do initially because your instinctive brain will fight back. It won't want to do the work, it won't want to be wrong. But once you get through that, once you establish this as a way of being, failure becomes cheap, learning comes in thick and fast, and progress becomes visible, obvious to everyone around you. So next time someone says, I've got this great idea for a thing, smile politely and ask the simple question, what's the because?